Behind the Herald Headlines with Darren Mann.
Behind the Herald Headlines with Darren Mann today, it's all about energy, and two organisations are challenging the national energy regulator in court over the electricity generation licences it has granted to Turkish energy giant Karpowership to provide South Africa with power through a controversial 20-year deal. Representing one of the two organisations who've taken NERSA to court, the Green Connection, their community outreach coordinator, Neville van Rooyen. Neville, thank you for joining us. How are you?
I'm well, thanks, and thank you for this opportunity. Lovely chatting to you today.
Give us the background to this deal, which has been granted to Karpowership, and then maybe outline what your objections are as Green Connection. Neville?
This Karpowership deal has been given to project has been allowed in three of our harbors, which is Saldanha Bay, Gqeberha, and Richards Bay, where we'll be putting these gas to power ships. According to them, this is going to be a solution for our long and short of it, our load shedding that we're currently grappling with. But we don't believe that is true and correct. We have objected to that based on the following reasons. We have not had enough information around the Karpowership, what it's all about, and what the complications and implications that there will be for the small-scale fishes, especially in the Saldanha Bay area where I do a lot of my work. The small-scale fishers has objected very vigorously to this and calling Karpowerships out and saying, you have not consulted with us properly, you have not given us enough information, and we demand to know in such a special breeding zone, what is this going to do to cause for our underground water species that we are breeding in that specific area where they are earmarked to put this gas ship of theirs. So no information, no feedback has been given to the small-scale fishers, and therefore we do object on those grounds as well. And even for us, we have not being, if the small-scale fishers is not being consulted properly, we also, feel that people's rights is not being, respected in this sense. But gas is definitely not the answer to our long-term energy demand. We demand that there needs to be looked at renewables because we're talking about a climate emergency here that demands us to move away from gas and coal and nuclear and so forth,
right.
And oil and gas. So therefore, we object to this in the strongest terms possible.
So just for listeners who aren't aware what we're talking about, the proposal is to result in the delivery of electricity to the Eskom grid from gas turbines which are installed on a fleet of floating power ships in Richards Bay, Saldanha Bay and the port of Gqeberha to be reviewed. You want these to be reviewed and set aside. So obvious dangers, as you've outlined. It's a long-term deal, 20 years. Is that a problem for you as well?
That is a problem for us as well. We are talking about a rapid change that all the rest of the world is doing away from fossil fuel possibilities, moving away from it. Why is South Africa having us locked down for 20 years more with the fossil fuel like gas? We demand, we have not been consulted properly. Why gas? Why the rush with these ships? Why have there not been other possibilities put on the table for us to look at as well? Why gas?
It says here that NERSA have granted the licenses, although you would think a government department, maybe forestries, fisheries and the environment, would be the one to make these deals possible.
Ironically enough, Forestry and Fisheries and the Environment has refused Karpowerships in the beginning. So this is why we have so many questions with this deal being authorized. Why have the department refused it, and why is NERSA going ahead with it? That is some of the questions that we have unanswered at the moment.
Have you engaged with NERSA, even at an unofficial level? Have you had any reaction from their side?
We have not had any reaction from their side. Yes, we're still waiting on their reaction. We had some interaction, and we're hoping that they will, come back to us on the reasons onto why they are doing this.
How long do you anticipate it'll be before we have a court ruling in this matter and we can move forward?
I really cannot say how much the court will take because there are a lot of things that they need to consider here. So I'm hoping that maybe I'm putting my head on the block here, maybe around a month or two before we'll get some progress on this.
You've mentioned green energy solutions. As your name, Green Connection, suggests, this would be an answer that you've investigated. So instead of these gas solutions over the next 20 years, what is sustainable for South Africa? We don't want the load shedding to carry on.
Exactly. That's we all feel the pinch of the load shedding. Therefore, we have one of the strongest possibilities of renewable energy possibilities in this country in terms of our wind and in terms of our solar possibilities in this country. Why has there not been renewable energy projects being launched pretty soon to address this load shedding that we are dealing with on a daily basis? Why are we running to gas that is a fossil fuel? That is one of our questions that we have.
One of many questions the Green Connection have. Thank you very much for joining us on Behind the Herald Headlines today. Community Outreach Coordinator Neville van Roy.
Thank you.
One of the organisations who've taken legal action against NERSA, the organisation Undoing Tax Abuse, otherwise known as OUTA. And representing them from their legal department, we've got Brendan Slade. Brendan, you're an admitted attorney. You've gone the legal route with us. What are the aspects that you're attacking?
Hi, Darren. Very nice to chat to you. We are attacking, or challenging rather, the approval by NERSA to grant Karpowership 3 generation licenses.
And the legal basis on which you are challenging this, what would that be, Brendan?
Well, initially we submitted written comments to NERSA back in 2021. So this entails that, first of all, NERSA was premature to, in the first place, have a look at the application and to facilitate it. But the other problem is this application we are bringing in court now is an application in terms of PAJA, the Promotion of Administrative Justice Act. So the grounds we are basing our argument on is that NERSA, as the regulator, did not take into consideration the relevant facts before it, and it took into consideration irrelevant facts when it granted the generation licenses. So according to our experts and what we feel as OUTA, is that the generation licenses were granted irregularly. It wasn't just for NERSA to grant them in the first place.
We have heard that it might possibly have been a decision for the Department of Forestry, Fisheries and the Environment, for example. So did NERSA have competency or jurisdiction over this?
Well, NERSA is a regulator and they have jurisdiction to grant or refuse the licenses. But the question of the environmental authorizations at the time when Karpowership made the applications were on appeal at the time. So as the regulator, NERSA ought to take that into consideration because it's a crucial aspect in Karpowership being able to proceed with any form of power purchase agreements down the line.
Now, we have heard that the NERSA electricity generation licenses were rushed through despite environmental opposition and even refusal from the department. Can you confirm?
Yes, we can confirm. That is absolutely why it is one of our grounds for judicial review.
Do you think that the deal with Karpowership is sustainable? It's a 20-year deal from what we understand. Is it sustainable in terms of the economy and also bearing in mind that we all want to see the end of load shedding?
No, that's a multifaceted question. It is absolutely not sustainable. How Karpowerships operate in the international world or where natural disasters take place, it's considered a temporary solution. So where there's a typhoon or tsunami in a coastal area, these Karpowerships usually moor to supply electricity for a very short period. Excuse me. So what the problem is here is our government wants to enter into a contract for 20 years. Not 6 months, not 3 years, but 20 years. And that is a massive cost to the economy. It is unfortunately not the solution to load shedding as government would like everybody to think. So the problem is there are a lot of other IPPs, independent power producers, which are already part of the risk mitigation program. So it's government is at fault when it comes to the delays of hooking these independent power producers up. So, and as we all know as well, the Karpowership independent power producers specifically got 1,200 megawatts worth of a 2,000 megawatts worth of bid. So it really doesn't make sense to continue. But on the economical side, if I may, at the end of the day, somebody needs to foot the bill, and this bill will ultimately be paid by the taxpayer, by the electricity consumer, because this will just spill over to future electricity tariffs. So it's unfortunately a death spiral if this continues.
Now, it's a difficult question, but do you have a possible solution for our energy woes in mind? If the court rules in your favour, what sort of outcome would you like to see down the line?
Well, in the immediate future, a win outcome, obviously, for the generation licenses to be set aside. But then we need to go back to the drawing board with government. We need to consider that there are a lot of other cheaper options to produce electricity for the capacity which Karpowership has won the bid for. So we need to see a reform of the tariff structures. We need to see a reform of all the red tape currently in place. And we need to streamline the process of connecting renewable energy IPPs to the grid. It's a much cheaper option, and at the end of the day, we will have a sustainable network going forward. It will help with the just transition to green energy as well.
Now, we often hear people say, privatise the electricity industry. What are your thoughts on that? Have you got a comment? Is it feasible? Can we do it? Why don't we do it?
It's possible. Obviously, we have all heard of the whole Eskom unbundling process. Unfortunately, we are currently sitting with a monopoly Eskom. So, diversify, privatise. It's more a matter of working together with somebody like Eskom, but other independent power producers also need to get into the market so that there is competition. With the competition, Eskom won't continue to hold the whole country at ransom.
Brendan, finally, have you got an idea how long this court action will take before we hear a decision?
That question is how long is a piece of string, unfortunately. But I can confidently say that we do expect opposition from NERSA. And just today we heard that we have an unopposed court date for the 5th of August of this year. That's on the Pretoria High Court unopposed roll. But as soon as the matter become opposed, which we suspect will happen soon, the process will unfold from there. But hopefully we will see an end to this within a year or two.
Any unofficial communication between yourselves and NERSA and possibly even Karpowership? Any reaction from those two?
No, we've just read some reaction throughout the media, and we have noticed that Karpowership has spoken out. They are also considering their options as well as NERSA, and we don't wish to litigate via conversation or in the public sphere, so we will speak to the merits as the court case unfolds.
We appreciate you joining us on Behind the Herald Headlines today. Thank you, Brendan Slade. He represents the organisation Undoing Tax Abuse, OUTA. They've filed an application in the North Gauteng High Court against licences granted by NERSA to Karpowership to provide electricity in a controversial 20-year deal. Thank you for your time.
You're welcome.
That was today's edition of Behind the Herald Headlines with Darren Mann.